Hey, good evening, everybody. Sammy Thunder here. Welcome back to the channel. And tonight I'm doing something a little different. I don't really do a lot of sit down conversations with other content creators. And I mentioned in some past videos that I've been wanting to kind of get more into that. And so this is a great opportunity. I'm sitting down with one of the premier content creators, Mike Moynihan, also known as Baseball Collector. I'm sure everybody who visits my channel has visited his channel before. He organizes a lot of the events for the national, and is just a great person to interact with. And been a big fan of his podcast. I don't know why I'm messing it up now.
Golden age of cardboard.
Yeah, exactly. Golden Age of Cardboard. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But Mike, thank you so much for coming on.
You bet. Everybody always is so complimentary to me, and I don't know. I'm just a dude that likes cards. Like that's kind of
You just have to take the compliments in stride and
like
just kind
I
of
know.
harness it in. But I appreciate your humbling ways, and just kind of letting your collection and your just presentation kind of speak for itself without having to really kind of push it over the edge.
Yeah, I
So
definitely, I definitely don't have agendas. I'm just a guy sharing cards, and my hopefully my passion comes across. I I know enough to be dangerous. No one can know everything,
right.
but I know a lot of people that know a lot more than I do, and so that's smart to surround yourself with smart people.
Well, they say, like, George Washington was. There were many things that people could say about him, but one thing that he was great at was being an effective listener. And so you can't really learn and kind of build upon your knowledge without really listening to others first. And so that's I think that's very there's, as you mentioned, there's a lot of people that know more about the hobby, and so it's always good to kind of keep a keen ear to others that you can learn from.
Absolutely.
But tonight I feel like tonight is just we're gonna just have a little bit of a conversation. It's kind of fitting given the time frame. Obviously, the big event that's coming up in Chicago is the National, and I know there are a lot of newer content creators that have kind of hit the scene that I think will be coming for their first National. This is going to be my second one. Atlantic City was my first one last year, and so I think maybe some of the topics we'll talk a little bit about tonight kind of relate to the national, as far as maybe what you're planning on doing, what I'm planning on doing, and so maybe we can start there. How does that sound?
Well, let me ask you. That sounds great. Question for you:
Yeah.
since last year was your first one,
Mhm.
did it meet, exceed, or underwhelm you from an expectation standpoint?
It's a good question. I it was explosive. As far I wasn't really sure what to expect. I knew it was going to be a massive setup. And for me personally, I had one day to experience it because my wife and I were kind of passing through Atlantic City to go down to Maryland. So I picked one day I got a 1 day ticket to go, and I had to make sure that I got everything in. So
Not enough time.
no, but I strategized, and I knew I kind of came in with a game plan, and I knew I had 1 day, and so I knew what I wanted to buy, and I knew I wanted to make sure I created some content for the channel. So it worked out really well as far as time frame and timing, and just being able to kind of navigate the convention center was uh, just worked out really well. As far as my expectations, I think it kind of I guess you could say it exceeded it, but it's kind of yeah, I would say exceeded because I accomplished what I set out to do for that
Good.
1 day. How about you?
Like Atlantic City in particular, I
Sure,
would.
we'll go with that.
I liked the convention center itself. Right, Atlantic
Mhm.
City is a dump, but the convention center and the way they set it up and how it was organized, I thought was great. Plenty of room to walk around, tons of dealers, and so from that respect, it was great. I got to see everybody I wanted to see, and which is always a huge part of it for me. And yeah, so it's it's never not fun. That's a double negative, but hey, it's a blast all the time, no matter what. I don't care. They could hold it in, you know, Muskogee, Oklahoma or something, and I'd still go. It wouldn't matter. It's about the opportunity to come together as a hobby and have dealers there and cards and corporate sponsors, all the different bells and whistles that come with the national. It's a special thing and it's unique. I've been to plenty of other big shows around the country. Nothing is like the national, no matter how hard they try.
That's definitely something yeah. I mean, being in New York City, we have like I forget the John Ryan's shows that he has. I don't know if you've ever been to any of his, but he he does like the East Coast National, which maybe it's just a title in place just for the New York, the tri-state area. But uh, while his shows have proved to be very successful, yeah, you're right. Nothing even really comes close to the height of the national. And I was actually curious. I mean, there, as you mentioned, you go to the national, you see a lot, and one of the biggest highlights is to see a lot of the people that you've watched videos of, and you get to meet them in person or see them again. When you're walking the tables, do you generally walk with a kind of a group or a posse of people, or do you generally kind of go as like a lone wolf and out, just figure things out?
The answer is both. Uh, a lot of times I like to lone wolf it because I'm kind of just it's hard to focus when you're trying to also carry a conversation or multiple conversations with different people. And so it is there's times I just need to get out on my own and kind of just look and take my time. And I try to do that. Again, if I'm there 4 days, there's plenty of time for me to go on my own. There's plenty of time, especially early in the week, when I still have money in my wallet. I really like to get out and kind of, and then once I get some cards bought, I'm like, okay, I can settle down now. I can spend a little more time with other people, and there's always people that will come up and say hi and hey, love your stuff, and want to talk for a minute. And I always really try to make sure I give them a reasonable amount of time to ask a question or whatever they want to do. And but it doesn't bother me. It's actually quite humbling if somebody even knows who I am. But it's both. But I love walking around with other guys. I love like there'll be guys that, oh, I'm looking for a certain pick a card. 58 tops Frank Robinson. I don't know, pick a card. And oh, I saw one over here. Let's go. And I'll take them, and we go hunt for the card, and maybe even yeah, you shouldn't pay that. We kind of talk through the buying process. And I do that a lot with friends. If I'm looking at a big card, I'm calling 3 or 4 guys. Hey, come over here and talk me out of this. Like, genuinely be honest with me. Am I making a good decision? Is this, because we get emotional about our purchases. All card collectors do. And we kind of get these, we kind of look at everything through rose colored glass. Oh, this is a perfect card. And somebody else who's not emotionally invested in the decision can look at it and go, yeah, it's really off center. You don't want that one, or whatever. Did you notice this? And they'll point out things that I didn't even notice on the card that would end up bothering me. But in the moment, I'm just like so happy just to find the card, and maybe at a reasonable price or whatever. So getting other people's opinions and bringing them into that decision process has helped me a lot over the years.
That's actually really, yeah, that's a really great point in terms when it comes to buying cards, because you're absolutely right. We do get emotional when we do approach a table and we see a card that is maybe hard to believe, for whether it be in the price or the condition or what, and our minds kind of go into the tank a little bit, and maybe we miss a few things. And so having that second or third opinion of somebody with you is, you're right, is absolutely helpful. And I feel like a lot of people don't have those on site, on the spot opportunities to allow to have a friend or to be able to give you their opinion.
Yeah, that is a
So
benefit to kind of knowing everybody in the hobby and knowing what they're really
Oh,
good at, right? It's not just I don't want to just ask anybody about a certain card. I want to ask the guy that I know collects those things and really knows his stuff about it. And my network of friends is pretty extensive, and I'm honored that that's true. So the best thing is it really helps if you're buying a big card. Let's say it's a comma card, something over $1,000. That's a lot of money. And most of the time, what they do is they reassure me, and it gives me a okay. I feel like this is a good purchase. Somebody else that I trust is telling me it's a good purchase. I feel much better. I don't have as much buyer's remorse. I don't have as much, man, did I make a mistake? Doubting, second guessing, all of those things kind of goes away.
that's something it's a good point. I generally kind of lone wolf it at the shows, but it's definitely inspiring me to link up with somebody else. And that was actually kind of lead me to another question, which is, there's no right or wrong way to approach this. I think. I mean, if you want to go and spend it all in one day, you can. If you want to stretch it out, you can. If you want to take your time, you can. Now, my thought was for this national, since I have 3 days to go. I'm coming Wednesday and going to be leaving Saturday morning, so I'm going to be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. My thought was is that since I have 3 days to spread it out, my Wednesday was going to be a day where I just kind of soak it in, take a look around, maybe do a lot of my content that day, and if I see something I like that I really really like and I can't pass it up, I'll go for it. But really, Wednesday or the first day, whatever it might be, was going to be just an opportunity to kind of soak it in, to really experience it without feeling the pressure or the need to buy something. Do you kind of agree with that sort of mentality?
Totally. I think it's really important because you're so excited when you get there. And I'm lucky. I'm going to be there even like I'll be there first thing Wednesday morning. It'll open to the public, I think at 1 or 1:30. I'll be there hours before that, already looking around. I try to walk the whole show before I buy something because the minute if I'm targeting a certain card or I see a card that I like that I need that. If you buy it the first thing, I mean, unless it's just a screaming deal, um, I will wait because invariably I'll walk two booths down or one row over and I find the same card better and cheaper, and so that first initial walkthrough is just my getting the lay of the land, getting comfortable, like you said, getting a good feel for it, seeing what dealers have what, and then I start going back. And usually it is Wednesday because I'll make it through the whole thing Wednesday morning. It's a pretty cursory look, right? It's I'm not sitting and just staring at tables and really diving in. It's a pretty quick walkthrough, a few hours, and it's pre-open to the public, so it's a lot less crowded. So it's a lot easier to walk around. And then in the afternoon, I start. Okay, let's go back to this table or that table, and taking notes is so critical, taking pictures, of booth numbers and writing down what you saw there. Oh, I saw this card there at this booth because you will forget. You will not remember where it was. Oh, I think it's over here. And it's really on the other side of the convention center. I mean, you just get so turned around. It's so easy to get lost in the table after table after table after table after table. They all start looking the same after a while. So yeah, I think that's a good strategy to take your time at the beginning because you never know what's around the next corner, what's on the next booth, what's on the next row. So just patience, I think, is good at the beginning. Again, unless it's just something I'll never see another one, I'll never see it at this price, whatever. But that's unusual.
Hmm. Yeah, it's especially if you're going in with cards in mind and you kind of have. I don't know if you've done this, but with cards in mind, I've kind of given myself kind of price ranges that I feel comfortable with based on what they're going for online or how are like wherever they're going, just kind of getting an idea of the price. And so if you kind of narrow that list down, you're able to make it easier for yourself to navigate table to table to kind of, as you mentioned, take notes, write down the prices, and be able to make the rounds, so to speak. And
Yeah.
once you've accomplish that, then yeah, as you mentioned, you can kind of circle back after taking all these notes. Um, do you, when you go to, I mean, when you're with your preparation, do you have an idea of what cards you want for the national, or is it going to be kind of just impromptu and you're going to base it on your just connection to the table and what you're seeing?
Yeah, both. Um, I have I'll probably have a list of 10 or 20 cards that I'll narrow down a week before and say, okay, if I can find these are kind of priorities, I guess is probably the right word. And then, I mean, on my want list, my kind of ultimate everything I want, I have a list of a spreadsheet that I will print and bring with me and actually have a physical copy of it with me. And that's 650 cards. So I'll find something. And then invariably, I also find things that weren't on my radar at all that I just think are cool. And I'll end up picking up a few of those things. Last year, I bought a 1973 Sadahara O card. I had no interest. I wouldn't have told you if you'd have told me before the show I was going to buy a Japanese baseball card. I would have told you were crazy. And
Hmm.
I knew the dealer, and we were talking. And he's such a great historical baseball player, and like I just like to have a card of his. And he happened to have a ton of them to choose from, and we had a great conversation. And I bought one, and love that I bought it. But that was certainly not on my radar going into the show. And that I just allow room for that. I like going in as open-minded as I can because it keeps me engaged, I guess. I'm not so tunnel visioned on certain cards. Although there are certain cards that are going to be priorities. And if I see them, you've done this. We walk around a show, and if you're looking for pick a card, 54 tops Jackie Robinson. We can all picture that card in our head. I know exactly what it looks like. I'll be able to spot it. It's weird how my eye, if I'm really looking for a card, I can go to a booth and in about 10 seconds go, yep, they don't have it. Yep, they don't have it. And so, at least in the showcase, right? I mean,
Right.
I'm a showcase buyer by and large. I don't hunt, I don't dig through boxes, and I'm not a value box guy, dollar box guy. I'm going to the show to buy bigger cards for my collection. I can buy the dollar box stuff on eBay or whatever, if that's not really my thing, but I don't do that. I just don't sit and spend hours going through dollar boxes. I'm looking for slab Hall of Fame baseball cards, and they're everywhere at the National. So it's kind of my little heaven. So, but you know what I'm talking about. When you're looking for a certain card, you'll be able to tell if they have it quickly or not because you see it in your head.
Right.
And you know what it looks like. And so, but the fun part is looking at cards and going, man, I didn't even know I wanted that card, but it just spoke to me in the moment, or I thought it was really cool looking, and you buy it. And I love those kind of impulse additions to my collection because I always remember them, and like, wow, I'm glad I bought that. I never regret that. I never go, oh, I wish I wouldn't have bought that. That was a waste. Because if I'm excited about it in the moment, usually that sticks for me.
Yeah, I kind of brought up a purchase that I made once where it was like a T206 dealer, and I've been collecting a lot of T206 cards, and the I purchased a common for about 50, $60, but the price is irrelevant because the story is that the dealer was I was trying to find like New York Giants players, and I found one player. The guy told me about his history. His name is Bugs Raymond, and I think he was a pitcher and for the Giants, but had a short career because he died of alcoholism, sadly. But the story was that he just couldn't get past his alcoholism. John McGraw gave him one last chance, couldn't do it. Literally left the polo grounds, walked across the street, drank himself to death, and got into a fight, and things kind of just went off the rails. But the story just kind of really caught it was too incredible of a story not to buy the card at the time. And so the story just grabbed me, and so I purchased it off the guy because I mean, for him to tell me that story to give me some more knowledge about this player, I felt like that was a great impulse purchase. And so it's definitely true. When you get those kind of stories, you have to just kind of connect yourself at that point.
The great thing about cardboard, isn't it? It connects us to history, to stories, to moments in baseball history. That's it's what all of it's about, right?
Yeah.
If it's about the money, and it's never not about the money, but it shouldn't be only about the money.
No.
It needs to be more than that.
I want to kind of go back to something you mentioned earlier, which was that you go to the national. You're one of the things you look for at the national are graded Hall of Fame slabs. Does I have it right?
Yep.
So, is there a reason why? Is it only graded Hall of Fame slabs, or do you look for raw Hall of Fame
Only
players
graded.
too? Only
Only
graded.
graded.
Why?
Uh, I'm a slave to the registry is the first thing. I'm going to get it graded anyway. So I'd rather, instead of me inspecting a raw card and maybe miss personally grading it, in the moment. And I don't want to spend all my time inspecting a card. Floor time is valuable time at any show, and especially true at the national, right? There's only so much time and there's a lot to look at. And so if I go and look at a card and it's a PSA 4, I know what a PSA 4 is, what the condition issues typically are. Look at the card. Is it nice for the grade? Is it center? Whatever the issues are, that's a much easier thing for me. And I'm going to get it graded anyway. So I'd rather just buy it graded. It's just one less step and hassle in the process of where ultimately I want it to be in my collection, because I'm doing a master project of every Hall of Famer that's been pictured on a Topps or Bowman card from 1950 to 1989. And it's 2,600 slabs. I'm 80 something percent of the way there. So I've got a lot of them already. And so it's now, I need, one card for a certain player run or whatever. And I'm looking for that, or I need a 67 Brooks Robinson, for example, tough
Mhm.
card. Right.
You're right.
And so there's just cards like that I'd rather just buy them graded than the hassle of buying them raw. Not that there's anything wrong with buying raw. It's just
Mhm.
not for me. I don't want to do it.
Right.
I don't want to mess with it.
When you mentioned you knew, like what a 4 looks like or what a 5 looks like, there is still a level of evaluation that needs to go into it though, because of, I guess, everybody has their preferences. Like a 4 might look really sharp, but it's off center, or a 4 might be slight rounded corners, but really good centering. What do you do when it comes to that? Do you do evaluate, or
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm just saying in general, what a 4 is. Like what are the major problems? What makes a card a 4,
right,
right? And
right,
and I kind of have an idea of that, or a 5 or a 6. And so I've looked at enough of them. But for me, register, like if I was to prioritize the things that matter to me, it's registration first. That is number one. It's a card with a picture on it. If the picture's not clear and crisp and good color, then kind of I don't want snow, blurry picture. Those are things that turn me off immediately, regardless of the assigned grade. I would be like, nope. Or the price, honestly. Like I won't like it in my collection. Centering is important, but probably less so. Corners are the last thing I like. An old card, pre-war card with rounded corners feels natural to me. That's like normal. It should have rounded corners. It's 100 whatever years old. Um,
mhm,
so sharp corners is kind of down there. I don't like creases through the face typically if it's a portrait card or something, or right through the middle of the card. That typically will bother me. Creases on the back, non-break type of wrinkles and stuff typically don't bother me. If they're if a corner's creased or something, that it just, I wish I could tell you like there's this set criteria, but as you know, it's just, you look at a card. Is it good for the grade, for the assigned grade? Is it nice? Do I care about centering? Of course. But if a card's off center, it got cut in the factory that way. It's not like somebody made it off center. And so I have plenty of off center cards in my collection that I love because I have the
mhm.
card and I can get it really cheap, but it's a beautiful picture, and for a lot of collectors that is distracting. If centering's off, it just bothers them or whatever. But so I would say registration numero uno for me is kind of like my priority.
Interesting. So when it comes, I'm not as invested with the registry, but could you fill me in exactly on how the registry kind of operates?
Well, when you buy a PSA slab, I have one right here. This is a Topps Living Lou Gehrig I just got today. Lou Gehrig's my favorite player. And this isn't in a registry. Let me use this card. That's just because I like Lou Gehrig. 87 Topps Ozzie Smith.
Perfect. Yeah.
PSA 8. Nobody in their right mind would care to own this card except me, because it's a nickel card, a 10-cent card or whatever.
Right.
But I'm collecting all the Hall of Famers from 87 Topps and 88 Topps and 89. Right. So I put this card in my inventory, right? And so I have this list of cards, the date I purchased it, how much I paid for it, whatever. And then PSA puts in other information of auction prices realized, whatever. But then that card, that Ozzie Smith card, can fit into multiple sets that they've created in the set registry. It can be in 87 Topps Hall of Famers, Cardinals Hall of Famers, Ozzie Smith player run. It can be in multiple different sets, and depending on what your thing is, whatever you like and why you're collecting that, Gold Glove winners, it could be an Ozzie Smith card. So and it tells you for this card what sets it would fit. It gives you a list when you look into the card and look at the cert and pull it up in your inventory. It'll tell you like, oh, this could be a card in your Cardinals Hall of Fame run. If you're a Cardinals guy, it'll tell you what it fits. And there's a lot of times I'll have a card. Oh, that's a cool set. Maybe I want to do that, and it then gives me a checklist and it gives me fun cards to go get. And there's competitiveness to it because the set registry, you're ranked against other people doing that same set. And it's basically a weighted GPA of each card. And so you can be 1, 2, 10, 100, whatever in the rankings. And so it's some pseudo competition. It's not really competitive in the way that I know who all these other people are. They're just random other collectors out there that own these cards. It's kind of fun I have the best set in whatever set you're doing, there's a whole, like each decade, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all have decade Hall of Famer runs. Like it tells you every Hall of Famer in the 50s Topps, 60s Topps, 70s Topps. And so there's not one that's 4 decades. I'm just doing 4 different sets that happen to encompass those 4 decades. And so, yeah, it's a lot of cards, but that's essentially what the registry is. It's just a way to focus maybe your collection. If you want, I want all the guys that won MVPs, and I want cards from their MVP year. I want the 67 Topps Carl Yastrzemski, and whatever. There's a set for that. There's a set kind of for everything. Pretty much anything you can think of, there's probably a set for it. And it's just a fun way to collect.
It's a very deep dive. It sounds like to be able to kind of go in different directions, which actually it's interesting. It kind of leads into a question. Collectors, I think, there's many. Obviously, there's as you just mentioned, there's thousands and millions or tons of ways for you to be able to collect. There's no right or wrong way, but collectors. And this is not a bad thing, but collectors always seem to kind of change the way they collect. So set builders will become single builders or player builders or what have you. In your time frame of collecting, what are some of the things that have changed, but what is the one thing or two things or however many things that you've stayed consistently the same since you started?
Honestly, I can't say I've done anything consistently. I've been collecting for 42 years straight with no break. So I can the only consistent thing is that I've loved cards the whole time. But I was as a kid, I would just buy packs of 81 Donruss and 82s and 83, all through the 80s. I would just buy packs and just randomly have cards. There was no focus whatsoever. Other than I was always excited to get Rangers cards. I'm a Texas Rangers fan. And so that was always a big deal, but zero focus. Then I became a player collector. I started collecting Darryl Strawberry. And then I collected Ruben Sierra and Juan Gonzalez and Josh Hamilton and Ivan Rodriguez and Nolan Ryan. So I became a player collector, and I call myself a recovering player collector because I realized it's absolutely impossible task in today's world of trying to get every card. Even with eBay and all the different ways that I couldn't buy cards long ago that way. It was, if it wasn't at a shop or somewhere, you weren't buying it. And so now you can find more stuff, but you still can't get everything. And Josh Hamilton was my last player super collection. I have, 5,000 Josh Hamilton cards. And I'm like, why do I have all these?
Mhm.
It became just this. He left the Rangers. He went to the Angels. He kind of fell off the planet in terms of being significant in the game. And so I just realized this is such a dead end road for me. Why don't I collect? And I have consistently always loved the history of the game, and I've always loved the greats, Hall of Famer type players. It was just a period, when you're young, you can't afford all the vintage stuff. And I always loved vintage too. I just couldn't afford it as a kid. I'd look at the showcases at the shop and be like, well, someday I'll own a Mickey Mantle or a Hank Aaron or whatever. And so I just kind of matured as a collector, changed course, whatever word you want to use, where I became, and I collect sets. I do buy the top set every year. I have every set back to 1973. I like having a complete set of tops. Just say, okay, I have every card that tops base top set update. I also buy tops update as well. And yeah, it just became where if I'm going to spend as much money as I spend on cards, I want to buy cards that are not of a player that could get hurt, get drunk and get a DUI, or pick your thing, right? I want to pick the guys that their story is already written and already been told, and their place in the history of the game is already set.
Mhm.
And so that allowed me to focus on that. Autographs is a huge. My autograph collection is better than my card collection, and so I've always loved having autographs because I think it's just the player touched this item, in some way, shape, or form, and interacted with it. I just always thought that was cool, a cool aspect of an autograph. And so getting Hall of Fame autographs and finding tough ones, and that's always a fun hunt, and
Mhm.
plus autographs can be on all kinds of stuff, right? Postcards and sports cards and you name it, magazines, pick your thing, right? They
Right.
can be on all kinds of different mediums. And so it's just fun to do that. So the great thing about the way I collect for me is I always have something to look for. There's always I have so many projects, although they're all focused in their own way, they're unique enough where I can always switch gears and I don't get bored. I'm always, I'm not just hunting for Josh Hamilton cards. If I was only a player collector, for example, I think I would get bored because at some point you can't find anything else, or it's all overpriced, or it just seems so narrow that I would get very tired of it quickly. And that's kind of what happened in the player collection world. Even though I would switch players from time to time and start super collecting someone else, it was still the same hunt, if
Right.
that makes sense. So chasing the same parallels, chasing the same, golds and whatever. I just got tired of it.
It can also get pretty expensive too, like the T206, trying to build that set. I've
Yeah.
heard it. They call it, I forgot what the nickname they had
The
for it, but
monster.
the monster, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I can definitely kind of see that. And which I mean, I remember, I think I brought this up with you, but, and I remember you mentioned something about this, and maybe it was in your podcast about when you go to a show, you're going to see that it's annoying when dealers don't show the prices on their cards. They either have it on the back of the card or don't even have it at all. And it can be, it's almost like, it's almost in that sense, you kind of avoid those tables because it kind of becomes like a guessing game at that point, and it's never really a good feeling to have to walk to a table where there's no prices. But I just wanted to. I mean, I was curious. Like, has your perspective changed on that, or has it been like about the same? I mean, does it when you go to shows? Is that the, do you kind of get that same impression?
Yeah. I've probably gotten even more old man get off my lawn. The further I get into the hobby, the more shows I go to, the more annoyed I get when there are no prices on the cards. I almost don't even want to ask because if they're too, I don't want to use the word lazy, but I don't, to me, it makes no sense why you wouldn't price your cards. I mean, look them up, price your cards, and I hate when a dealer says, well, make me an offer. $1 then. That's I mean, I don't know. I don't know the price that you tell me. It's your card. It's the dealer's job
Mhm.
to give me what their price is, and my job to say yes, no, or maybe, right? And to have to be the instigator of that process is not worth my time most of the time.
And you mentioned as well earlier, since we've been talking, that, doesn't just connect to the national. This connects to any card show. Your time is valuable. You need to make the most of the time spent because you're circling the room or going through the entire space trying to gauge um, the different cards that are available or the different sport pieces of memorabilia that are available. And when you encounter a table that has no prices, it kind of becomes turnoff from wanting to explore that table. Um, but to kind of go even a little bit further into that, what's your feelings on book value dealers versus market value dealers? Meaning, and I'm sure you know, but specifically what I mean by that is dealers that price their cards based on what they see in the magazine, the vintage magazine, or versus someone who bases it off of what they're selling for on eBay and auction houses.
Uh, the book value dealers are typically older school guys. They don't negotiate a whole lot. So I learn quickly that that's the type of person they are, and I don't spend much time there. I never pay sticker ever, ever, ever. So I don't care if it's a $10 card. I'm going to ask for $8 or 7 or 5, and they can either give me my price or I don't mind walking away. They're not rare cards. Vintage cards, especially, are not rare. People think you go to the National, you will see Mickey Mantles everywhere, all over the place. They're plentiful. They're everywhere. So to think that, and I don't buy like the esoteric, strange, Tharp's ice cream cob, where there might be one in the room kind of stuff. That's not my target card anyway. It's Tops and Bowman stuff that's plentifully available. And so I just I don't pay sticker, and I'm going to try to pay under comps. And I get a lot of, I have these arguments, I shouldn't say arguments, discussions with dealers all the time. Well, the last one sold for this, and you don't have to pay tax or shipping. Well, you don't have to pay eBay fees and PayPal fees either. So you should come down on your price. You're going to get cash in hand right now. And I feel like the buyer always has the upper hand. We have the leverage because we have the money. They want our money. We want the cards too, no doubt. But I can go to the next guy. If you don't want to sell it to me for what I want to pay for it, and you mentioned, having an idea, a range of what you want to spend on cards, and I do that too. On the 10 or 20 cards that I have on a list, I'll have an idea based on the grade range, kind of where I'm comfortable. But there's a lot of on the spot looking, and it's a lot of subtle stuff. If I see a card in a display case and it's got a price on it, I'm going to look it up. Oh, I'm interested in that card. Let me see how close he is. And if it's 350 on it and the last one sold for 200, I know that I'm not even going to bother because he's not going to cut his price in half, which is where I would buy the card.
Mhm.
If it comps for 200, I want to spend 150 to 175. So, okay, I just move on and don't waste either of our times. And I'm very proficient at looking up comps. And so it's not a big deal for me to do it and decide quickly if, okay, this is close. I think we can get there. At least I want to have a conversation with the dealer. But the book value dealers I just don't even bother. It's
Mhm.
not worth it. You're just going to spin your wheels and not get anywhere.
So I have a way of looking up comps, but I feel like there are going to be people who watch this video that are curious on the different ways that people do it. Um, the way I'm just going to share mine, and I'm
Yeah,
curious what yours is.
it's probably
I
similar.
Okay. Well, I generally use like 130 point as a general resource. It's free. It's a good option because you can look at auction prices as well as eBay, and then I will also kind of reference that across against like VCP, vintage card
Mhm.
prices. Is there any difference? Any differences? Anything that you do that I didn't mention?
No, I'm a VCP and eBay sold listings guy. Um, if it's if I can find some eBay comps real quick, that's usually the easiest way to do it. Um, VCP isn't great on your phone. It's really the base desktop version shrunk down on the phone. So there's no app version. So it's a little more difficult to navigate in the show, but it's not impossible. And so if I can't find a recent comp for a card because it just hasn't sold in a while, I'll use VCP because it goes back much further than eBay sold listings. But
And
eBay is my go-to because it's easy.
to follow up on that, when you do go you when you are using eBay sold listings, I think one of the curiosities that I had is how do people what are the keywords that people use when it comes to searching a comp?
The fewest possible is the answer.
So to expand on that, let's say as an example, I want to look up a comp on the Topps 1969 Reggie Jackson. Is it simply Topps 1969 Reggie Jackson, or is there something I should
Nope.
be?
Well, if you want to look at it in a grade, you might put PSA or SGC also, so you get rid of all the raw ones. That just eliminates those. Or if you only want to look at PSA, I might put in minus. Well, I'll just put PSA, and it'll pull up all the. Sometimes we'll pull up other grading company. People put in their listings. They're kind of sneaky that way, but not so much where it clutters it up too bad. And yeah, the
Mhm.
fewer words you can use to get the most results is try to how it's 69 Tops Reggie Jackson. Period. I don't put the card number. I don't
Mhm.
put any of that stuff because some people don't list the card number as much as we'd
Right.
like them to. There's a lot of, but everybody will put 1969 Tops Reggie Jackson.
Right. Well, I think, and also I think with the nice thing about the eBay sold is that you can go into the advanced tab and be able to specify. It actually gives you, or I guess you know this, but they auto recognize the fact that it's a baseball card, and you could specify the grade or the grader. So that is the advantage of using eBay. Whereas 130 point, I think you have to be a little more descriptive and be able to say top. If you want to looking for prices on six, what I would do is like Topps 1969 Reggie Jackson SGC six. And so I mean I'm kind of asking that question for, I mean, I'm sure viewers would be curious, but
Yeah.
also I'm actually curious because when I go to tables and I say this is I'm looking for so and so and they have it, I'm looking at comps and what they're searching versus what I'm searching, they might come up with some different search results that benefit them versus benefits the buyer. And so that's why I asked that question.
Yeah. It's funny when you talk about if they're looking up something different and I'm looking, if we're both looking up comps at the same time, because I don't trust them to do it right, or at least where I'm comfortable, right? And so I'm going to look it up for myself. I want to see it for myself. I want to do my own search. And it's funny, I'll find a card. Let's say they've got it priced at 150, and there's one on eBay right now for buy it now for 100. I'll show it to the dealer. Like, look, I could go buy this card, this grade for $100. I'll buy it from you for 100. No. And then it's funny. Sometimes I literally buy the card right there in front of the dealer, say, hey, you could add $100, but good
Mhm.
luck with that. I just bought it right here for 100, so I always do my own searches. I don't trust the dealers to do it. They're trying to get the most from their cards. I'm trying to spend the least. It's a fair fight, right? We're both, hopefully there's somewhere in the middle where it makes sense for both of us and you end up making a deal. But it's I'm not blaming them for looking up their own comps or not trusting. If they didn't trust my comp lookup, they can look it up themselves. That's
Mhm.
fine. And then there's room for discussion. But do it yourself is what I would tell people.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to what you said. if there's someone selling a Mickey Mantle for 350 and you saw a comp that's going for 200, obviously it's just not going to be there. The deal's not going to happen. The spread is too far apart. And I think that's a good point for people that are going to shows, uh, to save time and energy. Definitely, just do your due diligence and researching what comps are going for, and that will avoid a lot of hassle and a lot of wasted time.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to make crazy offers. What's the worst they can say? No.
Say no, exactly.
I mean, okay, no, I can't do that. Okay, can you do, cards at 200 bucks, 100 bucks? I'll give you 100 bucks cash.
Hmm.
Oh no, I can't do that. They sell for 200. Well, how about 125? And I want to spend as little as I can because I want to spread my hobby dollars out among as many cards as I can buy. I'm not going to overpay for a card just,
Right.
you know, um, so I always tell people, make crazy offers, make them tell you you're nuts 3 times, or whatever. And again, your job is to try to get it as cheap as you can. You're not people. I don't want to insult them or whatever. I'm like, I'm not trying to insult people intentionally, but I'm gonna pay what I want to pay. That's it.
Hmm. Absolutely, and I think that'll go a long way, especially for somebody that's going to the national for the first time, or going to just in general going to a show. Because I know there's a lot of people that watch our videos that don't have access to card shows, and so they really kind of take a lot of these videos as really good education, so that when the time does come, they are able to go into it with the clear head and a good understanding of how to approach a lot of these tables.
Yeah, we
So
made plenty of mistakes, so just learn from us.
yeah,
We screwed up plenty.
absolutely. Well, just wanted to finish up again saying thank you, Mike, so much for coming by. Is there anything else you wanted to discuss before we finish up?
No, I'm excited. I'm going to have you on my Golden Age of Cardboard podcast.
Fantastic.
So we're going to do that here shortly. So that'll be over on Bench Clear Media. So if you don't follow that, go watch it. Sammy will be there. I think it'll be next week that episode will air. So yeah, that's it.
Awesome, man. But yeah, thank you again so much, Mike. I'm looking forward to the podcast, and also more, big, like the really big picture of being able to see everybody at the national. And you mentioned again it was it Thursday? Is the meetup at 7 o'clock?
Thursday night, 7 o'clock, Embassy Suites. They have a reception area, I guess is the best way to describe it. It's
Mhm.
behind a wall when you walk in the lobby, up some stairs. It'll make total sense when you see it, but anybody's invited. Just come, get to meet. Hopefully, Sammy, you'll be there,
Yep,
and we will have a great time just hanging out, talking cards. So if you're listening, you're invited.
fantastic. Well, again, thank you so much, Mike.
You bet.
We will definitely be posting this shortly, and so thank you all so much for watching as well. Hope uh, for those watching, I hope you all enjoyed the video and taken some maybe some good notes from the interaction. If some of y'all are coming to the national, we look forward to meeting y'all. So thank you so much, and have a good night, y'all.
All right. See ya.